Hey guys, as promised, here is a second installment of the Passive Income Revolution podcast for this week. We are in a very uncertain time for us as investors. This is such uncharted territory. We have not seen anything like this in recent history. So the past 50 years, we have seen nothing like how this is affecting our economy as a whole, the world as a whole at the same time. So to keep you guys informed and keep you feel like there's some sort of level of control in your lives, I wanted to bring you this second episode before the week closed out. Welcome to the Passive Income Revolution podcast, where we help you create the life that you dream of. Whether it's through real estate, entrepreneurship, or just savvy investing, we're here to help you make that dream life a reality. No matter if it's that yacht in the ocean or just a little extra time with your kids, we're here to help you. We're going to talk about payment plans today because payment plans are going to become a reality in most of our existences as rental investors at this point. The economy is so sunk right now. So many people are temporarily laid off. My family's been hit by that. I have one of my immediate family member who has been released from work for probably 2 to 3 months. That's being given as a sort of average case scenario for the place that they work. So for me, it's a scary time because, of course, it affects my family. It makes me a little bit scared and apprehensive because I love my family. But it also makes me understand more of what exactly is going on with my tenants and that it's not just one segment of the population that's being affected. It doesn't matter if they work hourly or salary. Everyone across the board is being affected by this. As rental investors, we're going to be approached a lot in the next couple weeks in regards to payment plans and trying to set up something so that these tenants are not in a position where they are evicted at a later date. I know in some places that evictions have been freezed, can't file evictions in many places now throughout the United States. Here in Wisconsin, I can think of at least 4 places that have frozen evictions. So with all of that going on, it's of course important to keep an open dialogue with our tenants and a constructive dialogue. We want to make sure that they know that we're not their adversary, that we're here to help them. We're not necessarily looking to kick them out. And I do encourage each and every one of you to be very cognizant of that when you are discussing this with your tenants, because we ourselves are getting pinched as rental investors, and of course they are. So we're both in this position where we're both being pinched. And if we're not careful in trying to maintain our tempers, it really could flame a situation and make it exponentially worse. So payment plans are not something that you can just create on a case-by-case basis under 5 minutes, whip it out on the back of a napkin. I have seen this done, and every time I witness it or I see it when I'm meeting with another landlord, they pull out a tenant file and I see it, it makes me cringe, because payment plans should be well thought out items. They're not something somebody walks into your office or calls you and you quickly hash out the terms over the phone. The reason it's not that quick is because you want to have ahead of time some criteria that you set up for how it happens when someone approaches you and says, I need help with this month's rent or next month's rent. This should be something that is in your procedures, that it's so well thought out that you even have a template that you fill in the blanks, and that you even have certain criteria that the tenant themselves has to suffice in order to get the payment plan. The real goal here is that you want a well thought out payment plan that is easy for the tenant to execute and understand, but also offers you as the rental investor some necessary protections as well as protections for the tenant. So when I talked about setting criteria, let's call it a protocol. In my company, we call it a hardship protocol. So take a few moments to create a hardship protocol. This is what your terms are for accepting a payment plan. One of the best things that I have done recently in my property management business is sitting down with my managing broker and creating this hardship protocol. I never actually put this much effort into the idea of payment plans and hardship protocol until about 2 years ago. And since then, it has been an absolute game changer in our level of delinquency. So when I talk about setting a hardship protocol, what I want you to think about is under what circumstances are you willing to accept a payment plan? Now, this isn't referring to the total amount due. It's more about the circumstances. Was there a loss of a job? Was there a death in the family? A medical emergency? What type of events can occur in a tenant's life that you would be willing to create a payment plan if they occurred? The next thing you want to think about in your hardship protocol is what kind of documentation do you want that proves this event has occurred? We've all had those tenants who actually remind me of Corporal Cleaner from MASH, who, if you've ever watched the show, Cleaner was constantly trying to get out of the Army. So at one point, he had said that his aunt had died twice, but it was the same aunt. His mom had died 3 times, and his brother had gotten sick twice. So sometimes we've all had those tenants that end up like Corporal Cleaner, where you could have sworn that this has happened before, just a couple months ago, and they're really just maybe trying to take advantage of you. So one thing that we do is we do ask for documentation of the hardships now. So if someone has been laid off from their job, we ask either for some sort of unemployment documentation, or we ask for a letter from the former employer. In some states, if you're going to let someone go, especially in a mass layoff, you actually have to give them some sort of communication, either an email or a letter. You can't just call them all into an office and say, goodbye, go home, we're done. So we ask for that letter, we ask for unemployment verification. And as strange as this sounds, if it is a death in the family and we maybe have suspicions, we do ask them to produce some sort of proof regarding the death or the expenses related to the death. And especially with a medical emergency, the same thing applies. If they had a medical emergency, they say their child had emergency surgery, we want to see something from the doctor who performed the surgery that said, yes, this did occur, it happened on this day. And that way we're just sure that we're not being taken advantage of. Because again, I think at one point or another, you will hear a story from a tenant and it turns out it wasn't true. So unfortunately, I've been in the business long enough now that I do require documentation when we are entering into a payment plan. The next thing I want you to consider in your protocol is, what is the smallest amount you are willing to accept a payment plan for? I know this sounds like a crazy thing, like really the smallest amount? But I've actually had people come into our office and ask for a payment plan for something like $55. Of course, these tenants were of lower income. They had very tight finances. They were on various assistance programs. So for them, of course, $55 was a lot of money. But that's something that you want to be prepared for. So what is the smallest amount that you would accept a payment plan for? Of course, on the flip side of that, what's the highest amount you'll set a payment plan for? If someone comes to you and they finally approach you about being 2 months behind in rent, maybe that's $1,600, are you going to do a payment plan for $1,600? Or are they just, well, shit out of luck? Those are the things you want to have in place as part of your protocol. I wasn't going to add this in here, but I decided it's a good piece of information. So from my experience, one of the best things I did in regards to our payment plan criteria was I also set up certain parameters that my staff follows in regards to the amount of balance and when I expect the balance to be paid off. For instance, a payment plan for between maybe $100 and $500, I want paid off in 6 weeks. I'm just spitballing here. These aren't the actual numbers in our handbook. Those are somewhere not in front of me right now. So $100 to $500, I want it paid off in 6 weeks. Something that's $501 to $1,000, I want it paid off in 10 weeks. I set these parameters ahead of time. That way, again, when people approach us, not only do my staff know, okay, we need the documentation because they said that they were laid off from their job, then they also know that, okay, you owe us $600. This needs to be paid off in 7 weeks. They have all this stuff ahead of time that'll make it so much easier in the moment to create that payment plan. And when they do look at this parameter criteria of between $1 and $500, I don't include the late fees in that amount. So with these parameters, I'm not including late fees in the amount that determines the length of the payment plan. So they strictly owe $300 of back rent, and that determines in what parameter they fall into. I'm not including the late fees in this. Now that you've set your protocol, the next thing I want to be sure you do is every time you create a payment plan, you write it down. Believe it or not, there are payment plans that are still done orally. As I travel throughout the state of Wisconsin here, I'm always surprised when I go to a mass group of landlords. Maybe it's a lot of smaller landlords. They don't tend to join organizations. And I do a poll and I ask them, how many of you do this, this, or this? And I will ask, how many of you have oral leases, verbal leases? I get hands raised for that. I get hands raised for verbal payment plans. And what's really disturbing about that is if you're in Wisconsin and you're a landlord, just if you don't know this, now you do, your leases have to be in writing. In Wisconsin, it's actually in our state statutes that any lease that you expect to be enforced in court has to be in writing. And on a similar level, even though it's not written in the state statutes, really to have a payment plan that can be easily enforced in court, it should be written down. So not writing down your payment plan is just bad protocol. The biggest thing that it creates is it creates a situation where even if it is legally binding in your state that you can do a verbal one, if you have a verbal agreement, it basically becomes a he said, she said battle in court. It's your word against the tenant's word as far as what the terms were and anything in regards to that. You can easily create a template for a payment plan that you can fill in the blanks when the time comes. Having a template ensures that you don't miss any of the important details when creating the plan with the tenant. Your template should just basically be a fill in the blank. Whether or not you print it out and fill in the blank with pen or you fill in the blank on your laptop, just have it be a fill in the blank where it says Jason R. agrees to pay blank per blank until blank, 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 blank. Have it that it's form language where the language is in there clear, you're covering all your bases, and then there's the blanks left for what needs to be changed every single time. This will make sure your payment plans are consistent across the board, which we know from fair housing, it's very important to treat all of our tenants equally as we can, especially in regards to anything with payment plans. So make sure that that is happening, and it also makes sure that you don't miss any of the important things that you want to clarify or make sure the tenant knows when you're in the midst of creating the payment plan. Because sometimes when we're doing this with tenants, whether it be payment plans or anything else, when we're in the moment, we sometimes can get flustered or we feel like we're getting rushed because the tenant really needs to go or they're jabbering and it takes longer than we want. It's very easy for us to forget to put things in our documentation. So having it all prepared ahead of time, at least with a fill in the blank, will save you so much grief. When you're creating your payment plans, one of the things you should be clarifying in your template is make sure that you are covering what happens to late fees during the course of the payment plan. Now, there's any number of things that you could do with late fees. Are they going to continue no matter what, and they are included in the payment plan, meaning that the late fees continue even if there's a payment plan in place? Are you going to waive the late fee for every month that they keep the plan current? Or are you going to waive them in full or in partial if all payments are made on time during the course of the payment plan? What I will tell you from experience is that the easiest option of all of these is to keep the late fees and to have them as part of the payment plan. It gets more complicated when you're talking about waiving them for the months that they kept the payment plan, but then keeping the late fee for the months that they defaulted on it. The most complicated way, and I don't recommend this ever, is to do something where you are waiving them in partially or in full at the end of the payment plan length. That is the most complicated way to do it. So really, if you're looking for my recommendation, I suggest that you continue with late fees as normal and just include them as part of the payment plan. Now you might be wondering, well, why don't you just waive the late fees? They're coming to you, they're being honest. The reason I don't waive late fees is because unless, of course, it's a super extraordinary circumstance, which let me be clear that right now, what we're going through with COVID-19, the coronavirus, this would absolutely, to me, qualify as a super extraordinary circumstance. So I could see myself okaying the waiving of late fees on our payment plans during this epidemic. But in general, I don't recommend waiving late fees because it really only encourages the tenant to make payment plans. It makes another part of your lease pliable and workable, meaning that, well, you're kind of easygoing on that, so maybe I won't tell you right away I'm going to be late on my rent because I know if I do the payment plan, I won't have to pay the late fees. That's why I don't recommend waiving late fees in most circumstances. But I want to reiterate that right now what we're going through is definitely a super extraordinary circumstance, and I would be waiving late fees for any tenants that approached us for a payment plan. Now that we just talked about late fees being kept with the payment plans, you'll want to be sure and include these in your calculations. Meaning if your tenant owes you $500 right now and you're going to give them 2 months to pay it off, and your late fees are $50, be sure and do your math based on them owing you $600 as far as what their weekly or monthly payments are going to be. Every payment plan should have a length and thus a deadline attached to it. So every payment plan should have a set date as to when the back balance is going to be paid in full. If a tenant is paying you back $700, it's not enough to just write in the payment plan, Jason R. will give me an extra $100 a month until it's paid off. Well, why is that enough? Well, it's not enough because you aren't telling them when it has to be paid in full. You are assuming that they will interpret it as 7 months based on the fact that you said an extra $100 a month. But that's not explicitly said in the agreement. And that means it can be open for interpretation. A much better route is to say Jason R. will pay an extra $100 a month for 7 months beginning July 1st until the balance is paid off. Or you could say starting July 1st, Jason R. will pay an additional $100 per month through January 1st. In both those instances, you are expressing the deadline, which is 7 months from July 1st, and you're also saying that it will be $100 every month. So be sure with every payment plan, the deadline is expressed in it. Whether it be you say the balance will be paid off by June 30th with an extra $100 a month, or saying that an extra $100 a month for 6 months beginning February 1st. Make sure your deadline is expressed in one of those formats. Payment frequency is very important in a strong payment plan. Did you hear when I was going over the wording of the payment plan in the previous section that I didn't just say Jason R. will pay back the $700 owed by January 1st? If I had worded it that way, it would give Jason the right to take his sweet ass time and maybe pay me the $700 in full on December 31st. But in the meantime, between July 1st, when the balance occurred, and December 31st, he's not paying me a dime. So to avoid that, we be sure and put in there the payment frequency of paying me monthly $100. But let's take it a step further. Let's make it even more concrete. let's make an expected payment date for Jason. Since Jason's payment frequency is monthly, we'd say Jason R will make payments of $800 on the first of the month, starting July 1st and ending with January 1st payment. Now you might be wondering, wait, why is it 800 suddenly? It's 800 suddenly because in the way I worded this, I'm including the $700 for the current month's rent. So in this example, I worded it where he's paying us $800 on the first of every month starting July 1st because he's paying $700 of current rent plus $100 towards the back balance. And I'm saying he's going to continue that, ending with the January 1st payment. Now, if you didn't like that wording or you didn't quite understand it, that's fine. Because what you could word yours as is just Jason R will make payments of current month's rent plus $100 on the first of every month starting July 1st, ending with January 1st. If you have someone who wants to pay weekly or bi-weekly, that's okay too. It requires a little more math on your part. You've got to do more division in creating what the payment plan is going to be, but you can still word it the same. So Jason R will pay $25 every Friday until January 1st towards his back rent. His monthly rent of $700 is still due on the first of the month. Now in this example, we pulled out the current rent and made that a separate line just because of the frequency of payment. Now what if you have somebody doing bi-weekly? Well, we're just going to change the wording and do a little bit different math. Jason R will pay $50 every other Friday towards his back rent until January 1st. His monthly rent of $700 is still due on the first of the month. In both examples, we're including the language regarding the future monthly rent payments that are still going to be due on the first. This is very important. Some of you might be wondering what's better to have, monthly, bi-weekly, weekly. I've had all three of those. I found that typically monthly is a little bit harder for tenants to keep up with, but that's not to say that that one has always fallen through. I've had the most success with weekly and bi-weekly payments. Usually it goes with their paycheck. It's easier to have it go with their paycheck. So if they're paid bi-weekly, it's easier for them to think, okay, I got my paycheck. I've got to send my landlord $25, $50, instead of every first of the month remembering to write a check for an extra $100. So I do recommend doing weekly or bi-weekly because the increased frequency, it sort of makes it more impressed in the tenant's mind, but then also you're not waiting as long to see if they're actually going to keep up with the payment plan. So you're not waiting 30 days to see if the first $100 is going to come or the second $100. You're already getting an indication of how well they're going to keep it by the fourth week because you've already had 2 or 4 payments at that point. Okay. In the last portion of our trip down payment plan lane today, we're going to talk about the consequences. It's very important to spell out in your payment plan what the consequence is for missing and when that consequence kicks in. If Jason R misses 1 or 2 back balance payments or fails to pay another month's rent in full by the 5th day, grace period and all that, an eviction will be filed. Having that wording in your payment plan tells the tenant when the consequence will kick in and what it will be. So we've said when. It could be 1 or 2 payments. If Jason, and it really doesn't matter if Jason's on the monthly or the bi-weekly or weekly payment plans, your consequence, it's likely going to be the same number of missed payment plan. Now, what is a missed one? That's of course up to you. Is it missed as in it never got paid, or is it missed as in it was late by 2 days? That's all stuff you have to consider personally as far as what you plan on enforcing. But we've put in there what the consequence is. It's the eviction being filed, and we also included when it kicks in. And remember, it doesn't just kick in if they miss a portion of the payment plan. If Jason keeps up his payment plan, but he's short $100 on a future month's rent, the consequence still kicks in. We will still file that eviction because he has defaulted on the payment plan because of the clause that we had in there that he's paying an extra $100 above and beyond the current month's rent. And we also had he's still obligated to the current month's rent. That's why that in language is so important. That gave us the permission to file the eviction if he fell through on a future month's rent or missed one of his payments. And just like everything else, don't be flexible on the consequences. If your payment plan says that you will evict Jason R. if he misses 2 payment plans, then follow through and actually evict him for it. Don't have the consequence in there and then not enforce it, because you're ceding power to the tenant. And that's how they eventually gain full control over the situation without you even realizing it. That's actually something I talked about in a podcast a couple weeks ago, is this idea of the small ways that we cede power to our tenants. So when we have a consequence and it's in our papers, we should be following through on that consequence most of the time. I really hope this brought some clarity to you guys, maybe a little bit of reassurance about how to create payment plans that are solid for you and for the tenant. This wasn't just about necessarily creating payment plans that protect you, but it's also about creating payment plans that are easy for the tenant to keep up with and remember, and to also be sure that everyone is fully protected in it. If you guys have any questions about payment plans, please feel free to hit me up. You can find me over on social media, Instagram. My handle is at passive INCREV. It's like Passive Income Revolution shortened a little bit. You can find me on at Brio Properties as well on social media, and just ask me your questions there. I'd be more than happy to answer them. One of you did recently hit me up on Instagram, and you reminded me that I have not been doing the 2 random facts about myself in the episodes lately. And I did look back, and I will say, Sarah, you are absolutely correct. I have not done a random fact about myself, at least for the past 3 episodes. And at that point, I actually lost track and forgot to listen to the rest of them to see if I had them in there. So, Sarah, thank you for catching that and reminding me that I did promise to do this. So because it seems appropriate right now, given everything we are going through, the random fact number 1 about myself is that I am very, very close to my family. My brothers and my sisters, my nieces and my parents, they are an absolute huge part of my life. So right now, as I'm recording this in the state of Wisconsin, we are under a safer at home, which is basically a shelter in place order, which means that I have not seen these people. I haven't seen my parents. I haven't seen my sister for 3 weeks. I have cheated. I have seen my brother and his family and my adorable 3 nieces, but not seeing them has been honestly torture for me. And the prospect of not having Easter with them is killing me. We already missed St. Patrick's Day, which is big in my family because we are a lot of Irish. And I also missed a birthday already. And I'm going to miss another birthday coming up. So that is absolutely killing me right now. But I know that when all of this is done, my family and I are going to get together for an awesome major celebration because my family loves getting together and loves celebrating. And I'm so blessed to have an amazing, supportive family like that. And I really do know I am, because I've seen versions of other families, and it always makes me really appreciate what I do have in my life. Random fact number 2 is going to be much more lighthearted and fun. My entire life, like since I can remember, 5, 6, 7 years old, my favorite cereal was made by Quaker, and it's called Corn Bran. It really is the most, I guess, tasteless cereal you can get because there's no added sugar. There's none of the sweetness that most kids like with their cereals, that even adults like with their cereal. But it has been my favorite cereal for some reason. Quaker Corn Bran. It honestly is like the most tasteless stuff that you could buy for cereal, but for some reason it is my favorite. I never add any sugar. I never add anything to it. And I just have always, always loved it so much. So it's always been strange when anyone ever asks what my favorite cereal is. Like maybe in elementary school and middle school, that was a big question. Nobody else ever had the same answer as me. And all the teachers always kind of looked at me with a little bit of a sideways face, like, oh, you poor child. We're so sorry. That's what you get for breakfast. And I'm like, I choose that for breakfast. Like when we go grocery shopping, I pull that off the top shelf and I put it into the cart for myself. I don't know where I started eating or why, but it's been my favorite. And now I'm saddened because I haven't been able to find Corn Bran. So if anyone has a lead on finding Quaker Corn Bran, I would really appreciate getting that message through social media because I haven't been able to find it in the local grocery stores that I shop at here. Thank you, Sarah, for reminding me to do the 2 random facts about myself. Hopefully I will keep it up and you won't need to remind me again. Have a great week, guys. I will see you in a couple days for a brand new episode.